Welcome to second episode of Agile. Will fail at my company because it's a series of case study reviews that I like to do with my friends, Agilists who I respect, who I've had the pleasure of working with, and we play a little game around this. The winner gets story points because points really don't matter in a game like this, and we hope to have a little fun as we discuss this particular case study.
I'm Caleb Arnold, Seattle, Washington. Was introduced to Agile because I couldn't stand working on waterfall projects. They were very cumbersome and arduous and very political, and kind of took off from there. Became an Agile coach. I was an Agile coach pre-COVID. Was an Agile coach for a large outdoor recreational retailer, and currently am Scrum mastering about 3 teams. And then also use Kanban in order to be able to manage continuous musical flow. So I use that for a small label that I have and a group of musicians that I help organize their work, and I'm running a giant experiment with proof on the other side that it's easier to teach people how to do these things when you don't call it Agile.
So you are a lead singer too, right? That
Yeah.
For your band, and
Yes.
You're helping your band to go through the production process of releasing a song and teaching them about Agile as you also work as an Agile coach.
Yes, absolutely. And you can find us Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, all the stuff. Shameless self-promotion. Collab and the Kettle Black. Yeah, it's just a play on the words, not the pot calling the kettle black. It's actually the kettle black.
But I'm a product owner for a software development team in a large multinational corporation. And I've been a product owner for this team for the past 2 years. And before that, I've never heard of the word Agile or Scrum or anything. And Dawal was my coach, and I learned about Agile and Scrum from him. And since then, the product has grown. Basically, the software that we develop runs on large supercomputers, and that's our specialty. We started off with one small team focusing on one application, and since then we expanded to take on a second application and now a third application, and then we were local to Houston, and now we have grown to both Houston and Bangalore.
So you have a lot of experience being a product owner for multiple teams and also working in a very challenging technical environment, right? With supercomputers and also on complex math
and across time zones, Houston and Bangalore.
Right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Felicia. I've worked with Dawal for all of my product training, which I've absolutely loved. I've been in product for a little bit over 8 years, have worked for smaller startups and also mid-size enterprise level companies in product ownership and product management. And alongside of that, I'm working on a passion project called Empower Product Women. I have the best opportunity to work with a fantastic group of women to drive a platform for community-driven learning. And so we want to learn and grow from each other as women in product, and just have this space for articles and courses and very community-driven and submitting articles and courses amongst each other to launch this platform. So I'm working on that on the side.
That is really awesome. I've been following some of the emails, and it's really cool how you have taken like a discovery-based approach to kind of learn what is needed and then build from there. So
Yeah.
Applying your product management skills in your. So how do you all find agreement, Caleb, in your band? You have okay. Did I touch on?
Well, sometimes it's hard. I think. We all have, without going into, some of the other frameworks that are out there, we all have a system optimization goal, right? Our goal is to release music and release the best quality of music that we can. And so because we're all oriented around that, and we have a strong level of trust with each other. So I know if I pass something to them that they'll come back with, even if it's not the final piece of something, they'll come back with something that is equal or better than what I would have thought of. Or different, and really challenging those ideas and pushing into it really helps kind of keep those creative juices flowing, because it's not just about playing an instrument and recording it. There's an entire process involved with manicuring it and getting mixed and then curating it up to the point where it's ready to put out so that the audience doesn't hear all the painful stuff that we had to go through in order to create that thing, right? I mean,
Right.
I think the last song that we created, I wrote in 2010 and we recorded in 2014 and we just released it. If that gives you any idea how long some of these things take. And it's just because it sat there and somebody finally brought it back up. And I was like, why don't we have this out yet? And so we released that song. So it definitely helps to have a flow, because even stuff that's way down at the bottom of the backlog actually gets to surface itself eventually.
We have a case study today, right? And this case study is called Agile Will Fail at My Company Because Everybody Wants to Be a Product Owner. Now, the way I understand what is happening here, my friend, they submitted this case study to us. And what they informed me about is there's one team and they have 5 so-called product owners and 1 backlog. And my friend is trying to get them off the idea that no matter like how much he tries to help them understand that there are stakeholders and there can only be 1 product owner, they don't actually understand that there can be 1 product owner, partly because they don't trust that they will, like the 1 person who gets selected to be the product owner amongst the 5 will actually value what other people want. So the way they are describing that is the business side doesn't trust that 1 PO won't hog the sprint, right, for only their work or agenda. On top of this, the upper management knows like they need to fix this, like having multiple people claiming to be the product owners for a single team, but they are not like at a space where they can actually do that. And my friend is frankly disheartened, no, because they don't feel like they will ever get to a state where there will truly be 1 product owner. I've kind of captured a little bit of a dynamic where some people within this group of 5 are using command and control tactics because they feel everyone else should be able to voice their opinion and fight for their features just like they do. If it works for me, why does it not work for you? Type approach. So I'm kind of curious about how you guys have interpreted what's going on in this situation. So the first part of our game is called hashtag it.
So the 3 hashtags I selected were leadership, roadmap, and strategy.
Right.
The reason I selected leadership is first, it was not clear who the real PO is, and the product owner's primary job is to prioritize and must take responsibility for the consequences of those priority decisions. So it seems like everybody wants to say what needs to be done, but who's going to be accountable and who's going to take responsibility for the consequences of decision. And the focus seems to be too much on just a sprint, but a product lasts longer, hopefully for multiple sprints. So you need to balance the short-term interests and the long-term goals. And about the command and control and trying to just get your way, I think it's just risky. It's a lack of understanding about leadership. It's risky to make decisions in a vacuum without trying to get consensus, because again, if you understand that you have to be responsible for the consequences of your decisions, then you will understand that you need to make sure that you make those well-informed decisions. So that's about leadership. The second was about roadmap, because now I'm thinking about like, how do you go about solving this problem? And so roadmap will help make transparent to everybody what is going to get done now, and as opposed to what is not going to get done.
Right.
It'll help with the discussions with the stakeholders, and also roadmap needs to be aligned with the business strategy, which brings me to the third hashtag. Apart from just the business strategy, there are also other strategies that you can use to like solve this problem. Like how do you drive alignment among the stakeholders? How do you increase your productivity? Like how do you reduce work, splitting work items into smaller valuable items, and removing other impediments. And also seems like there's an issue of trust here. So maybe focusing on how to like continuously deliver on your commitments might help with getting trust.
Felicia, I see you excited and eager to go. So tell us, what are your hashtags?
Sure. So I chose culture, team, and strategy. The reason for culture is just because one of those, like, upper management knows they need to fix it, but they aren't there yet. So that's just an overall company cultural issue of how to proceed with kind of an organizational structure. Um, and then I chose team, both because there's 5 product owners, so one backlog, and that's very much a team issue, along with the lack of trust within those 5 product owners, and how, as a team, would you develop that trust? And
Right.
then lastly, strategy, I picked because, like, what kind of strategy are you implementing from a roadmap and product level that helps influence your backlog and prioritizing your backlog? So kind of depending on what that looks like, that could very well influence trust as well amongst the product owners, and kind of getting alignment on what one PO would look like in managing that backlog.
Seeing some similarities between what you said and what Rahul talked about, right? With respect to strategy and Rahul, your use of a roadmap as a way to drive alignment.
Mhm.
What do you think, Felicia, about the roadmap aspect? Would that be something that you've seen that has worked before, or?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that works. I usually intertwine roadmap and strategy together. I definitely think your strategy influences your roadmap, and then your roadmap influences your backlog. So that's
Right.
kind of why I highlighted strategy first, because if you get that set right and you have agreement across the company or the team, then that influences your roadmap.
Caleb, how would you hashtag it?
Hey, so mine was a mix between Raul and Felicia.
Yeah.
I picked culture, leadership, and team. And I picked team initially. Actually, I picked management, and then I scratched it out. Then I picked team, and I picked team member specifically.
Right.
So if we start with culture, I feel and like the first thing that pops in my head is stop trying to do Agile, stop doing Scrum because you're not doing it. Immediately go back to waterfall and everything you were doing before, and just go through all of those pain points so that you remember why we do these things to begin with. Because 5 product owners to 1 backlog is just a cultural problem, and it's also a problem with trust. And also, it's not just trust between the product owners, management, and leadership to make a change. It's a trust from the business that thinks that one PO won't hog the sprint. So obviously, there's a big cultural barrier that's actually perpetrating itself through the entire team. And I guarantee you, I mean, this only talks about the product owner and the business and the Scrum master. I guarantee this bleeds all over the team. And so they're definitely feeling the impact of this, especially with 5 people barking at them all the time. I bet there's no side work that comes in ever here with this team, right?
It's
Um,
Taylor sarcastically, right?
right? Then I picked leadership because this is really a chance for leadership to start coaching and understanding why they would be trying to do Agile or Scrum or Kanban or any of these concepts at all whatsoever. And it's obvious that they don't understand it because they're not making the impactful change of squaring up the fact that they've got 5 product owners over 1 team, right? So leadership really has an opportunity here to take some type of a stance, or better yet, actually turn themselves into coaches for the organization so that they can help coach management and know how to support the teams that really want to do this effort and this work. The other reason, and that actually leadership is why I scratched out management, because
Right.
managers aren't going to be able to do anything until leaders start actually taking action in this particular space. And then the last one I picked was team member, because I don't feel like there's any team members here. Everybody says team. That seems to be a word that gets thrown around a lot, but there's no team members here. The product owner wouldn't be barking orders at anybody or actually trying to shout out anybody else's ideas to get their own on the table if they were actually operating as a team. And so I really think just collectively, whether they're doing Scrum or Waterfall or anything, understanding that they're a team member is really just a good starting point for all of these individuals to understand what that means. Because without that, I mean, it's just everybody working in individual silos. And it sounds like that's happening here.
Right. So that's like a second order effect of multiple people working directly with the team and not trying to reconcile their preferences for what the team needs to work on, is they all end up siloing the entire and now I have to do team in air quotes because it's no longer a team, right? It's mainly individuals responding to the loudest person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even get into the fact that when you have 5 product owners, what the job security must feel like in that space, right? Whenever there's supposed to be 1 and you've got 5, and you know who's going to get voted off the island next, and there's got to be a lot of insecurity, and that creates distrust, actually.
I am curious about how you distinguish between management and leadership, Caleb, because I think what you mentioned was you strike off management to then say leadership. So I'm kind of curious, like, what do you mean by that? Why did
I hate, so John C. Maxwell has this awesome quote where he says, there are no world managers, there are only world leaders. And so I always think about that when I think about management, is that in this space, it really needs to start with leadership, and that includes management. Managers also need to start acting like leaders in this space, and how can they coach and also lead and support teams that are operating in this space. And the leadership also needs to be able to do the same thing with their management, right? So there's multiple layers, but really just get rid of the idea of management, and the amount of leaders that will arise around good leadership should be a good indicator of whether or not you're doing the job right. Just personal opinion, but seems to be true.
When I said leadership, I didn't mean the business leadership or somebody with a leadership title or a manager. I meant more on a personal leadership or an individual leadership. Whoever feels, because to be a leader, you don't need any titles or roles, right? It's a mindset. So anybody on the team, anybody who's working with that product, any one of those 5 POs can step up to be that leader. It's all a question of who is willing. There are 5 POs, but there are really 5 people who want to put forth their request. Who is actually going to step up to be a leader, to take responsibility for the consequences of decisions? That is the mindset I was coming from. So I was more thinking about individual leadership. Somebody out of those 5 fake POs should be a real PO and be the true leader.
Right.
Or it may not even be any of those 5. Somebody who cares about the product. It could be the Scrum Master. It could be somebody who steps up, who cares about the product, shows up as the leader.
Bro, I couldn't agree more. Somebody do something right now. Because it seems like a chaotic place to work, right?
The hashtag that was given by my friend was capacity. And that hashtag was not selected by anyone. We had product and team. So I see a commonality between Caleb and Felicia identifying team and team member. The product hashtag could be very well close to the strategy hashtag that I heard from Felicia and also from Rahul. So I'm gonna distribute some story points. Are you guys ready to find out how many story points you won? Yeah. Do you know how story points work? You just make stuff up and then you give it to people so they feel good about it. So Felicia, you're gonna get the most number of story points at 21.
Hey.
So Fibonacci story points. Caleb, you're going to get 8 story points. And Rahul, you're also going to get 8 story points because I believe you can do better. I know you can,
Hey.
can deliver more story points. So I'm curious now, what will you do in this situation? Assuming that you are in a place where your management acknowledges this is a problem. You are, let's assume your role is that of a team member or a Scrum Master. How will you exercise your empowerment, your leadership skills to work through this situation?
I've been in a product owner role, right? I'm in a product owner role. So as a product owner, then I would basically do justice to that role and be the leader. And my first and foremost job of a product owner is to prioritize, to understand the value of the product and of the work, of the requests that are coming in, prioritize the work, and to manage WIP. And you have to basically, prioritization means saying no to somebody. Because we have to embrace the fact that capacity is limited. And we have to embrace uncertainty and know that things do not always, in complex environments, things don't always pan out the way we plan. So you have to make contingency plans. So the first thing is to prioritize and honor the pull-based system that the teams have, because otherwise you can just keep pushing work onto them, but that is not going to be very productive. So, and that means telling no to somebody. So one of your stakeholders is you have to say no to, and you have to manage that, and there's no way around that. And that takes courage. It takes long-term thinking, and it means you have to deliver on your commitments, because if you say yes to somebody, you actually got to deliver quickly, move on, so that the person you said no to today, you can say yes to the next time around. So
Right.
it's a balance. Yeah.
But in your context, Rahul, you work with other PhDs, no? And like they from their position, I could imagine some of them, not everybody, but some of them could have an ego that is really big, and they would want to make sure that you listen to everything that they have to say, and you prioritize according to their preferences. How do you work with that?
So you mean ego can be big or small, it doesn't matter, but ultimately reality is reality. So so the one tool that I used from the setup is nobody can, I mean, you're kidding yourself if you like try to deny reality. So whether you're big or small, everybody has so that's the great equalizer, reality and time. So I use that to my advantage. I made everything transparent. That's why I go back to the roadmap as a strategy. If I have multiple stakeholders, I invited them all to the same room, and I just presented the backlog as it stands in front of them and asked them to fight it out and just watch. And if the loudest voice wins for one round, that's fine. For the one sprint, because you have to start thinking about the long term. You can't just be focused about winning battles. You have to look at the winning wars. So one sprint, let the loudest voice win for one sprint. Then use that to first say, okay, you got your way into the prioritization, but is the team ready to deliver on that? Is the team actually delivering on it? And how long is it taking for the team to deliver? So I started focusing on the delivery, on the releases, definition of done. And so it doesn't matter what the number one item is, as long as the number one item can be shipped out soon, then there is going to be space for number two. So I started focusing on that. That was under our control. So having tougher negotiations on minimizing the scope, defining MVPs, so make it as small as possible, as quickly deliverable as possible. Transparent, so everybody knows that, and consequences. So it's like, if you keep being silent, if stakeholder A is always silent and the loudest voice always wins, I just project it out and say how painful it's going to be for that stakeholder. Sooner or later, all the silent voices will start speaking up.
Right. So what would you do, Felicia or Caleb, in this situation? Anything that you would amplify from what Rahul has shared, or something different that you would try to do?
I have a little bit of a different approach that I would take, and one of that approach is really taking it from the perspective of the customer, and what kind of value are we delivering to the customer when we're talking about this backlog and these priorities and how many POs we have. So I would likely take the time to do a little bit of research and see where the highest customer value is, and really create a safe space amongst these 5 POs to have a conversation about that and talk about, okay, for our product, what value are we delivering, and what does this mean to, what do all of these different stories in the backlog mean to each of you, and how can we build a consensus on a more of a prioritized backlog focusing on that customer value and that delivery. I think one of the things that has come up time and time again throughout our discussion is this lack of trust. So kind of taking that learning from the book Crucial Conversations, like getting back to creating that safe environment where everybody's comfortable being transparent with each other. So kind of identifying, you know, where people are struggling and why they don't think it's possible to have one PO. Once you take that customer perspective, I think it alleviates some of that internal pain and dialogue that happens naturally.
I like how you're shifting the focus away from me as a product owner to who we are trying to serve, which is your customer. So people can let go of personal preferences and then find some commonality.
Yep.
That is really neat. Thank you for sharing that.
Are you waiting for me? No, those are both awesome. I had not thought of the customer perspective, and that is really, that value to the customer is really what drives stakeholders. A lot of times, those conversations are awesome. I know I was really thinking about the perspective from the Scrum Master and what the Scrum Master could do to really help coach the team and the product owner space, and how they might go about doing that. And part of it, to Raul's point, is, you know, it would be really critical for the Scrum Master to be able to influence those product owners to have one key point person that they would be able to talk to when decisions are made between the five of them. And like you were saying, like, go off in a room and you guys figure it out. And one of you is the person of contact, and you come back and let us know what the decisions are that you guys made, which would help keep the disruption from from infecting the team a bit, but also allow like the key decisions to be had without really having to feel like side work is coming in, or, you know, whatever that potentially might look like with 5 different POs. The other thing too is just, it sounds like, and it feels like, I don't know why, and I hate going back all the way this far, but almost feels like a foundations of Scrum wouldn't be a bad idea for this entire group, including the business side, because then they would understand where they are supposed to engage and why they engage at those particular events and who to engage with. And that wouldn't be with 5 product owners. That would be with, if it was with 5, with a consensus decision that comes out on the other side. So there's just some foundational stuff that feels like it's missing. And my dog agrees with me. You hear him in the background. No, but I mean, it's just, there's just, it feels like some key principles that are just completely being derailed, which is kind of causing that chaos. Another thing too is, when I was looking at, because I look at the bubble and it's a thought bubble, right? When we're looking at the slide, and this individual is, they could have, but I felt shouted down all the time, which makes me ask, what is the confidence of the Scrum Master to be able to really do that job? And do they understand, you know, have they been doing it long enough to be able to kind of handle these crucial conversations, to your point, Felicia, like that really being able to engage that. I mean, there's one thing about being a coach or a Scrum Master or a product owner, is you have to be kind of comfortable with hard conversations, and getting that into that space, I think may help this entire group better reflect on how they're showing up with each other.
I can also look at it from a Scrum Master's point of view, right? If say none of the 5 POs are actually want to be the PO, they just want to be the fake PO, they don't want the accountability or take the responsibility for the decisions, then the Scrum Master who's in charge of process can invent a robo PO of sorts. So have some kind of process to break the ties, maybe use some kind of mischief or some other mechanism. So invent a so then there is none of you are all of you are fake POs. You give inputs, but the real PO is actually an automated PO or a robo PO. So if the Scrum Master is a leader, then he could use that approach, because Scrum Master controls process. So it's another way.
So folks, you heard it here first, an artificially intelligent product owner, so you don't have to take ownership. You can defer it to AI. This is cool, Rahul. Like, so what I'm hearing is you could use some kind of algorithm, no, mischief, which is weighted shorted job first,
and let them give inputs to the process. But at least it is some, instead of chaos, it's still one row in one source of truth. It's better than one person hogging all the thing and everybody else feeling hurt as a result. And so let them ignore the product owner and the decision aspect. Maybe that some people are not comfortable with that, right? So maybe they don't want to take ownership of the decisions.
Like getting your Netflix recommendations, no?
Because you watched this.
Yeah.
It could just be a conversation starter. Okay, this is what the robo PO says. Do you all agree? And
Right.
then maybe you don't. Then you just have discussions after that point.
So let's see what they have done so far, right? And I think the universe agreed on your suggestion, Caleb, because it was not just you and your dog agreeing that they should go back and review the foundations of Scrum and go and look at what they should do. But that was essentially what this team did. They looked at a whole team reviewing the Scrum guide to discuss the importance of one product owner and one product backlog. But so far, the conversations have not resulted in any change. And that's why the case study was submitted to us as panelists.
5 POs go in, 1 comes out. I'm kidding. But I do really like that. Like the robo PO is actually, that's you give them some type of framework or mechanism to be able to have decision making among themselves, and that might be a very good way for them to have to come to consensus or realize whenever some of them need to step out of the way.
I guess the question that I'm falling back to is, are we trying to solve the collaboration between these 5 product owners, knowing that it won't change, or are we trying to dissolve the 5 product owners, knowing that they should be going back to Scrum basics?
That's a good point. Yeah, part of me wants to say culturally that needs to be, because this is one team, right? Can you imagine if they had 2 and 10 product owners, and then 3, 15, right? Like part of me in my, like in the back of my mind culturally wants to know, are these all friends? Like, is leadership and these 5 product owners, are they all friends? And that's why everyone is able to keep a product owner position with one team. Like there's something going on there where it's not rooting out what the real cause could be. And it's totally raised my curiosity about, what that might be.
Yeah. I'm also curious about, like, how is the team funded? Because ultimately the team is funded somehow, and maybe that person who's funding it is making some kind of decision on how to fund it and having some kind of like value versus return on investment kind of thinking. So maybe that person is the real PO, and maybe you should seek that person and go and get that person be the real PO.
Maybe they found 5 POs for the lowest wage they could possibly find. And they're just holding on to them.
What I've also seen in some instances is where the organization, like especially in very large organizations, they will buy custom off-the-shelf applications, and then there will be a team that maintains or works on the application, but that application supports multiple business units, right? So that could be the situation here where the so-called POs, as Rahul, you call them fake POs, right, from large-scale Scrum terminology. The so-called product owners, they're all representing the different business units, and they all want changes to happen on the same application being maintained by this team. So it's more like a cost of just having a custom off-the-shelf apps in your organization. So my assumption is the funding could be just a cost, like it's a running cost that we pay every year because we have SAP or whatever big product we have.
Okay.
So what would you say? I really like to kind of get more into what you were saying, Felicia, with respect to, are we trying to solve the PO? Could you kind of tell us more about where you were going with that?
Yeah, some of our solutions have been, okay, let's figure out how to get these POs to collaborate and pick, like, basically who wins at a certain period of time, versus dissolving the POs into different roles, and pinpointing one product owner. And I mean, I know in larger scale teams you can sometimes have a product manager and a product owner, and like maybe one's more strategy oriented and one's more executionary oriented, and then you can kind of figure out where the other 3 current POs fit in after identifying those people. And then if know, if you're just trying to get everybody to work together and not necessarily changing the positions themselves, I think I still really fall back to customer centricity and like what are we delivering. And you know, we have all of these departments that have all of these different ideas, but what does that mean to the person that we're delivering this work to, and prioritize it based off of that instead of personal interest.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any final comments from any of you or all of you? Like, what would you tell our friend over here?
Good luck.
Good luck is definitely on the cards.
Definitely read Scrum, the Scrum guide. It's only 18 pages. Like, make sure everybody reads it. And then, yeah, use some crucial conversation tactics or negotiation tactics. They need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like Felicia's last point. Like, go back to the basics, because Scrum isn't going to solve your problems. It's going to painfully expose them. And if you have 5 POs, that will become far more painful if you go back to just the basics, so that you can really start seeing where those organizational impediments are at.
Thank you.